Recovery 101 Radio, here with another edition of our Recovery 101 War Stories. Of course, the war stories are always fun. Today we're going to talk about what not to do when you're in the hospital. Now, when I lived in Oregon, which of course is, you've heard of any of my war stories before, many of my war stories happen in the fine state of Oregon. I was in college. I got the flu. Now, we don't just get normal flu up there in Oregon. We get the Bangkok flu. Everybody's sick. Half the school's gone. They're not running any classes. Classes that would normally have 60 people have 15 people in them. They shut down the entire school for a few days, actually about a week, I think. And I end up in the hospital, 104 fever, and I'm just dying. So they put me in the hospital. I'm in there for 4 or 5 days. About day 4, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm sitting there and I'm a good dope fiend. I'm thinking, I should be able to get loaded in the hospital. Now, one of my friends did bring me, we used to have a guy who used to grow this stuff, they called it basement bud. Basement bud was this green, purple-haired, sticky, crystally bud that they would grow hydroponically. And he hollowed out some cigarettes, because this is back in the day. You could smoke inside the hospital, which you cannot do now, but you used to be able to. And he made me some special cigarettes. Punched a hole right through the middle of the filter, filled the rest of it up. We sat in the room and we smoked these hardcore joints. And that was great. But just didn't quite give me what I was looking for. So I'm in the hospital, and I've been in there for a few days, and I've got the heart monitor things on me, and I've got an IV in my arm of saline or whatever. And the thought occurs to me that it would be a great idea to have one of my buddies bring me in some cocaine. Because I'm sitting there in the bed and I'm looking. And I'm looking. And I'm like, I can see where they put like antibiotics. They come up and they stick it into that syringe where the line's coming out of my IV bottle. And I say, Gina, that would be beautiful. Make myself up a few doses. We got the tray where you can flip it up, so I can put a spoon in there. I can make stuff up. No one can see. The nurses will be walking by. I'll be like, "Hi, how you doing?" So I make myself up about 2-3 good hits, and I go up here to where the little dripper thing is. I got this little tiny hose, this little dripper thing. I turn off the drip. I fill up this other thing like with about 3 big hits of coke. And I'm like, this is going to be beautiful. I can, turn it on a little bit, turn it off, get a rush. So I reach up there and I turn it on. Now you got to remember, I have absolutely no idea how big a drop is, what a drop is, how much fluid's in a drop. I don't know if I need a bunch of drops or a couple drops. So I figure what I'll do is I'll just turn it on, let it go drip, drip, drip. And when I start to feel it, I'll turn it off. Now, if you've ever slammed cocaine, to wait until you start to feel it, probably not the best time to try and grab a small, thin little piece of plastic that's dangling. So I have it turned on, it's like drip, 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 and all of a sudden I'm like, oh. And I'm feeling, I get the taste in the back of my mouth, I'm like, oh. And I reach over to grab this thing. Now this is a little thing, it's about this big and it's got a little tiny dial on it and it's hanging suspended on this tiny plastic thing. And by the time my hand, it's up here, by the time my hand gets to here, I'm going like this. And I'm trying to grab it and it's flipping around and I can't grab it and it's still dripping. And I'm like, oh. And finally I grab it and I turn it off and I'm like going like this and I'm in the bed. And I'm like, oh. And I start hooking these things like with my hands that are flying around. So I've got the little sensors on me. And my thumb's pulling them off me and it's hooking. All of a sudden from the side of me I hear, doo! And I look over and I'm blue lining or red lining or whatever the hell they call it. 10 seconds later, I have half the hospital in my room. Coming in, crash cart, they got the things, the guy's squirting the shit on, he's coming in, he's like, clear! And I'm like laying there, I'm like, no. The guy's like, hey, he's not dead. So, they're in there with me for a while, they check my pulse and respiration, my pulse is like 25,000 a minute, I don't know what it is, it's like some ridiculous amount. My blood pressure's in completely jacked up. And they're all standing around, and finally they leave, and, you know, I convince them I've had an insulin reaction, and that's why I was convulsing. So, you know, they bring me in, you know, a bunch of pudding and stuff, which, you know, I've been doing coke, I really don't want to eat any pudding. But they bring it in, and the last gal that's going to leave, they got me all hooked up to the machine again, she's going to walk out the door, and she turns around, and she goes, oh, your saline's off. And she goes over and she turns it. Drip, drip, drip. And she turns around and walks out. Now this time I'm quick. The moment her back is turned, I've got to turn back off. So I'm not convulsing or anything. Next morning, my doctor, who knows I'm a coke fiend because I thought it'd be best to tell him I'm a coke fiend in case something ever bad really happens, walks straight up to me, comes in and says, don't bring that shit in my hospital again. And I'm like, what? I wouldn't bring anything. And he's like, you don't bring that cocaine in here again. So that, my friends, is what not to do in a hospital.